the number of dependencies that interdependencies would also grow, right? And browsers now, even now, are still limited in the number of download threads on current downloads. It's still limiting. So we had to think a little bit about the design behind this, and it was actually something called RJS that was part of Require.js. This was like a bundler type of thing, and this would concatenate all the stuff together, and that would minimize the number of requests by just giving you one larger payload. That's actually another form of a bundle. Next, we have CJS, CommonJS. That's another format, module format that Node adopted, and with some tweaks to the actual initial spec. And that basically had entirely different semantics than asynchronous module loading. Asynchronicity is core to the browser. Things can't just hold the main thread, the actual event loop. And so a lot of times when you're loading data, it goes off into a thread. Download the stuff, and whenever it comes back, you get it, and then it goes back into the event loop to allow you to have access to the data and do whatever you need to. In CommonJS, this is all synchronous work, right? You write require statements, and that stuff is executed synchronously. Things are loaded from disk synchronously, and it doesn't have nearly as much complexity once you start doing things synchronously as you would in the browser. So that was a big win for Node, and it's fantastic. One of the other things that happened in there is that Node shipped with this thing called NPM. You might have heard of it. It's got
like Yarn?
And so they are probably more Node modules in NPM than they are stars in all the universes combined together. It's just guessing. I don't know the exact math for that, but yeah. So then some folks that are even more smarter than I am, they got together and they said, look, we have this couple of different module systems, and eventually we want to standardize how modules behave in whatever host that this JavaScript is running on. Why don't we standardize it? So TC39 is a group of folks that write whatever that goes into the language. They put all the brains together and they came up with a different syntax, and it's actually called import. It's just an import statement, and then you export whatever you need to export, and that's what's visible when you import that module, whatever you put in the export. So the important thing of this is standard. That's the most important part of this. Now the semantics are defined for you. You don't have to battle between different hosts. The hosts are just what runs your application. So it's just a fancy name for Node or browser.
Do you know why they decided to put the I've always wondered this but never looked into it. Why they decided to put the package last instead of first? You know what I mean? It bugs the hell out of me. It's like really.
So
I can't sleep some nights.
That's interesting because to me it's almost like reading a little bit more of a natural language.
It's just hard because in our editors, right, I can say like import. I have to write the package before it can give me IntelliSense to what I'm importing.
Right? You just have a bad IntelliSense. Because
the dynamic language, sure.
No. I mean essentially. Okay, so I'll talk to that a little bit. So one of the things that is important about the syntax written like this is that it's meant to be static. You can analyze it statically, and that was one of the big wins for Node too, with require statements that were static. And what that means is that you didn't have to dynamically load the files and then resolve things. Like you can't do an import statements, assign a variable where the quote X is. You can't put a variable. That was something that AMD allowed you to do, but you can't really do that in this syntax. One of the reasons for that was to allow a static analysis of files. So if your editor can't load that preemptively before it even shows you the file, then there's probably some tweaks that can be made, because that's one of the reasons why it's that way, is because that statement should be able to be processed. You get the file name at the end, and then whatever imports in the middle you should be able to
But you need the file name. That's the problem.
Okay, so you're saying if you're actually doing like
in
from
Python
scratch,
they do the from first. In
Gotcha.
C# and Link they do the from first. And there are plenty of places where they
so
do
you're
the from
saying
first.
if you're trying to write the import up front versus going through some, well, shit, I don't know, man.
Yeah, all right. I'm just wondering.
Okay, you got me. Let's scrap the standard. So how does that's why you hackled me.
There are no fog forbidding standards.
Yeah, exactly. So, but what's the problem with this? Now we have large ecosystems backing either AMD, which was fundamentally a browser thing. You had CJS that is also backing big ecosystem behind Node. And now you have the standard coming up and saying, yeah, we're going to do it differently, which is awesome. But you also have lots of legacy apps. And they all even either use script tags or AMD or CJS or whatever other stuff that they might be using. And that's what the bundles are doing for you. The bundles are basically taking all of those problems and all the good things and trying to solve them for you by doing quite a few things. They are concatenating the code, so they're fixing some of the problems with concurrency. Bandwidth now is so cheap and so easy to deal with versus concurrency. It's so much easier for me to open up a stream against the server and download a bunch of data than it is for me to make 20 requests to that server and then just poke it quite a bit for just a few things. So bandwidth it works in our favor. Number of globals, self-contained, meaning that you execute that thing and nothing comes out of it. There's nothing going into the global space. Unless it's UMD, which is Universal Modular Definition, and you want to export some things for traditional applications and such. That we won't talk about that too much today because we don't want to talk about legacy. So module formatting dependent, it doesn't matter really what you imported. You could have used import, require, or AMD. And bundles, when they're created, they normalize all the stuff and give you something that will execute. You don't have to worry about what's in it. Code sharing, you can include things from NPM, server code, whatever, optimizations like code splitting, unused code removal. There is just so many good things about bundling. That's why we're going to be talking about them today. So how do you create them? Trick question. The bundler. That's why you hackle me. So bundlers, what a free time. It's my OCD. So what are they made of? It is voodoo, actually. I lied. But essentially what it is, broadly speaking, bundlers have an engine internally that will do 4 fundamental things. They will do name resolution. That then goes through the file loading part of the bundling. Then file manipulation and dependency resolution. So let's talk about those 4 things in more detail. So let's talk about this little piece of code right here, and we're gonna break it down and see how a bundler would process all these parts using the 4 main components I just mentioned. There are many more, depending on how much complexity you want to add to your bundler and what problems you're solving. But those 4 things are fundamental. So here we have import statements. That means that it's ECMA 2015. That's not traditional stuff. Well, now traditional because it's 2 years. Come on now. We have, I should have added a couple of classes in here, but it doesn't matter. We have an import statement that actually uses a relative path. And then we have an actual import statement that uses path. Anybody know in Node if path is a built-in module or an NPM package?
Yes.
Local?
Yes.
It's like both. It feels like there's probably a path package on NPM because those.
How does the bundler figure that out for you? You can't really say,
Resolution algorithm has an order.
yeah, that's part of it. So
I'm really about to start coded. I'm going with that one.
But that's the difficulty with this, right? I mean, we are actually going through the process in the bundler to figure out what path means. Which one should you use? Should you use the one provided to you by Node, or should you use the one that you provided in the Node module directory? And if you're actually running this thing in the browser, do you think path is going to work? Yeah. Well, bundlers don't really have much of an option. Shit works or it don't work. I mean, so the thing is that you want to make it work. So those are the complexities that these things are fixing for you. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. So name resolution, the primary purpose of this is take those strings and convert them to fully qualified paths that you can actually say import. That's what we tried to get away from. So you can get access to them via a file system call, or you can do an AJAX call, depending on if you're on whether or not you're using some browser loading system, or if you're just using Node to load the files. Whatever system that you're using, it needs to have a fully qualified, or some path that it allows you to fully qualify sweep module or path to something that exists in the system. So that's the first step. So the second one is to take that output from the name resolution and load it from disk. In this case, we're going to load it from disk. I'm going to say just load it from disk, or you can make an AJAX call. It doesn't matter. Should have gone over this a little more. Put a little more emphasis. This is really high complexity because of the things I was just describing. This is supposed to also take into consideration your environment itself, like whether or not it's Windows or Mac. I mean, there are some problems with all of these things. So, anyways.
Can you hit it says like hide next to stop sharing?
Nope.
Yay, okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
You're good.
I'm a rookie.
You can hit full screen too if you feel like it.
No, is it like showing how many tabs I got?
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Anyways. So fetch is pretty low in complexity. It's just a call to get it from disk or AJAX or whatever. The only intricate thing about it is that if, in this case, I'm reading it synchronously, the bundler needs to know, it needs to be able to support, it needs to know that it's either reading the file synchronously or asynchronously, so that it can compensate for whether or not it needs to do things like promises and such, or callbacks. Or if you're just like me, you just read it synchronously and continue along with your life. So transforms, these are pretty interesting. This is what made bundlers amazing. This is the what is it? Meat and potatoes? What's the expression? Yeah, that works, doesn't it? Yeah. So this takes the code that the source that was just loaded from disk or whatever database or anything that you pulled that from, and you can use this stage to transpile the code. What that means is that you can take your CoffeeScript and convert it to JavaScript so that it runs in the browser and Node. You can take features from other versions of JavaScript using Babel, and you can convert it to something that runs in the browser and in Node. So this is the stage where you take the code and you make it runnable in pretty much any platform that you need to. So the transform is probably one of the more fundamental parts of bundling. It just helps you take the source and make it as accessible in every platform as you can. The other one is dependency resolution. This is interesting. It can be complicated depending on whether or not you're using something that's already built or not. But basically, it takes the transform code and it creates an abstract syntax tree, and it will pull out require statements and import statements and all of those things to figure out what other things are being required by what are the dependencies in the source that you're processing. So if we look back, this module has two dependencies. It has the sweep module and path. So when I'm processing this module itself, this last stage is basically going to take that source and pull those two out. And that's where the loop starts. If you take those two and you feed it back through the top to resolve what that name is, and then you fetch it from store, and then you transform it, and then you can put it again through the dependency resolution process, you can build a dependency tree. That's the important part of this. Now, it's not easy stuff, because some of the things that that need to be handled in this loop are things like circular dependencies. Good luck with that.
There's a Webpack plugin.
I solved it in mine, but it took me like 5 years. Not quite that long.
How does what you're talking about handle, so the program you were showing before also depends on console log, right? So how does it manage, is it just looking at imports? thinking to
Um,
make the dependency tree? Is that like how do globals play a role in this, or don't they?
Well, I mean, when you're parsing these things out, not you, when you're using a transform like Babel,
Yeah.
Babel knows that console is just a reserved thing, basically. It just exists in your global. And it lets the system figure out what that means. So
At runtime.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Because there is really, like, even in Node, for example, Node has console.log, and internally Node will call this process that's stdr or std out, depending on whether or not you call console log or console error. So it calls the proper stuff underneath. So that's one that doesn't matter much. But we'll talk about another one in a little bit that is a little more intricate.
Cool.
This one is just a global that is just everywhere. Yeah.
Definitely personality.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
How do you resolve runtime requirements? Dynamic requirements from the
Well, you're dealing with imports now, and you can't do that.
Well, okay.
Not with import.
in a bundler.
So, personally or in general? Because the bundling stage is for you to take an executable. That has nothing to do with dynamic loading. I mean, you can put some metadata on top of the bundle to be able to dynamically load and know where things are. So when you, all right, let's talk a little bit about that. So when you have a bundle and you're requiring something that is not in that bundle, you either have it preloaded in a script tag in the browser assumptions of the browser, or in Node you don't really do code splitting as much. But that stuff has to pre-exist in the browser. So when you do a require statement on it, that module is already exported out by name. If you don't do that, you're going to have to add some mechanism like Load.js or some other helper that basically resolves or converts that module you're trying to import into an actual URL. So there are different ways to do that. You can, similar to what Browser Path does, it maps names to IDs. So you can map names to URLs where that data is going to be found. So you can massage things out, but it's not, I mean, I don't worry about that right now. Let me write out an example a little later.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if there was like a generalized strategy among bundlers, that sort of thing. Or
So
kind of like
the general strategy that I like is something that, for one, is not prescriptive of bundler-specific stuff, which is something that Webpack loves to do. I'm the opposite of that. I don't want my stuff, my bundler. I don't want that in any of your code. I want that stuff to stay out of the way. So the spec coming up has already defined, well, not coming up, but the module loader itself just got kind of finalized, and some browsers are already implementing it behind flags and stuff. But there is something called system.load, or import as a function. The stuff that I just said is old. Import, you call it as a function. Assume that that's actually an asynchronous call. So when you're processing your source and you encounter one of those, that's a very, very good point for splitting out. So one of the things that I like to build with BigBundler is whenever you see things like import with an actual parentheses to call it as a function, assume that that's actually another split point. And then around that, put metadata that you can then say, all right, load that bundle, and then everything else will just continue executing after that's done. If that makes any sense, that's how I would handle that part, but different bundlers have different strategies. Going from, you're going to have to tell me in your code how you want me to load this dynamically, and then kind of like Webpack, I don't love like that. I'm going to trash talking, so.
I was enjoying it.
Huh?
I was enjoying it.
You
I was enjoying it anyway.
Oh, yeah. So, anyway, so that's kind of like the backstory, kind of boring stuff. But where we are now is, I like to categorize them into two different buckets: the DUI, do it yourself. Don't put anything in the DUI. Do it yourself, and the ecosystems, right? The do it yourself is where you get Browserify, Webpack, Rollup. Those are the popular kits. And there's BigBundler, like Nobody even knows about it, and you have to build an entire ecosystem around this to be able to work, for you to be able to get an application up and running. And that's kind of what we're going to do in a couple of minutes. And then you have ecosystems that are out of the box, give you so many features, like they give you the dev server already, they give you live reloading, they give you all the things that make your life easier as a developer. But since we're not going to talk about any of these guys, we're going to talk about this guy. We're going to go the manual route. Now, I did create Bundler Reactor. It's basically analogous to Create React App that is built on top of Big Bundler. Gives you everything out of the box. Okay, whatever. It's good to experiment. If anything, I learned not to do it. So there are a couple of things that I like to highlight that have made these bundlers relatively useful and amazing. And it's the ability to exploit node modules. If you don't have the ability to tap into that resource, you're almost at a loss. There's so much code that's been written and published and tested so well that if you're not using that, then I don't know, you're going against the odds. Same for extensibility. That's the whole thing about transforms. When you're using browserify and such, they call them transforms directly. The other stuff you don't plug into as much because they're prescribed for you. In Big Bundler, I built it as a framework. So the stuff underneath is a framework, and you can configure it to run in the browser or in Node. So you have to inherently configure the name resolution, the fetch, save, and when things get executed in the environment. We won't talk about that too much. Yeah. Anyways, let's see what we can do. We'll I don't know how much time I have. I got like 2 hours. So we'll just hash through a simple example. I actually want to submit a talk somewhere. I don't know yet where, but it's building an app. The part that I'm going to do is taking a hello world console logging simple Node app, and then converting that stuff to React and showing how step by step you can take that from just node index.js all the way out to serving that up. See how that goes. So we're going to use Bundler to do your dirty work for JavaScript. We're going to manage the static assets, things like index.html, and if you had images and such, we use that. CPX is actually a very nice NPM module. That what it does is that you give it a glob. You give it a string that represents a regex. We'll simplify it to that. A regex that, when it's expanded out, it gives you all the file names that match that from a directory. And it gives you the ability to monitor whenever they change. So it's a win-win-win for everybody here. So what I did is that I just leveraged that instead of retrofitting into Big Bundler things like management of HTML assets. You can do that. Nobody's stopping you from that. I mean, there's tons of flexibility there. But why? Why? That's one of the things that I have difficulties with now. I have difficulties understanding why we try to shoehorn things like browserify into Go. It's a lot of friction. If anybody has set up Go with browserify, you should by now know that it's a ton of friction. Don't do it. Why? And I don't buy into the whole streaming thing anyways, but anyways. The server, we're going to use live server. This is, I made a PR to support loading up your local files for configurations. I had my own in the past, my own dev server, and then I scrapped it in favor of something that existed. But the thing that existed, there was a request to add support for local configuration files, and I said, all right, I'll write one, put the PR out. It's not merged yet, so we're going to use my local copy. And Process Manager, PM2, I added that because it's cool shit. Gotta say, we'll see how we can leverage this. Anyways, let's get into some of this madness.
I've never seen that before. Editing evolve.
What's that?
Never, over your mouse. Never mind. Editing evolve. No, never mind.
Spanish.
It says editing evolved. Right over. Never mind. Just ignore me.
Yeah.
I'm heckling.
Right below Visual Studio Code.
Oh yeah, there you go. I was one. Jeez.
Never noticed that.
Earlier you mentioned exploiting node modules.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people have been exploiting node modules lately. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, and that was a very unfortunate instance. I don't know if anybody
I don't
knew,
know
but
Exploiting human error.
well, wait.
Wait, what happened?
So I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but there was a node module that was, and this shit was malicious.
Yes.
This guy used a name of a module that was very popular by one of my all-time superheroes. I'm not going to mention names because I will get embarrassed. But he has a very, very, very popular package in NPM, and somebody else removed the dash. So a lot of people made the error of installing the wrong one. When this module is used, it takes your entire environment variables and sends them to a server. Well, what kind of stuff you put in your environment variables besides your passwords? Well, password tokens. I'm sorry, my bad. I'm not authorized yet. So. Anyway, so yeah, that's what that was. But immediately, people, well, not immediately. There were some issues, and NPM took quick action to remove that, and they basically canceled that person's account because they had a few other modules that had the same idea of stealing common names to trick people into bad things. Don't do it. It's evil shit, man. Don't do that. Alright, so I'm not gonna use Vim out of principle. Alright, fine.
Show.
So we'll just create an index.js. That's what we're gonna do. We'll create that, and then we're just gonna put in a simple console.log, and we're gonna put in there hello world.
Make it larger.
Come on there.
Maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Okay there?
Yeah, great. Great.
Wow. Looks pretty big over here. Alright, so we're just gonna run it. See what happens. As you might have expected, that's what happens. Now, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna actually just introduce another as a good refactoring person, and I'm just gonna add a second file called hello. I'm gonna create my own module that basically does this for me. Wait a second. Don't do that. And I'm just going to do module that exports a function that basically calls, we'll do it here, console.log, hello world. And here, I'm just going to import that. Actually, no, can't do that. There you go. Now, how many of you actually do this? Not put your extension behind the name. Evil. No, I mean, so here's what happens. You're putting more burden on the actual system because one of the things that happens is that if you have a JSX file, a JSON file, a JS file, you're actually asking the system to figure out which one of the three options you got. So those are three system calls at worst for each file that you're requiring.
Computers are good at that.
What?
Computers are good at that.
Not necessary for bundling. If you have a very large system, I just don't think it's necessary. Anyways, do it. But don't tell me you do it.
Sounds extra characters, though.
Whatever. So,
Right? I mean, am I right?
Premature occupation.
Yeah, hey.
so there you go. So you now you have two modules. You have index and you have hello world. And but this doesn't run in the browser. So how can we make this run in the browser? Well, let's just do a quick npm init, and we're going to bring BitBundler and then just create a quick bundle with it. So yeah. And sure, why not?
So it's npm thing. So Vanilla again?
Okay. So it is working.
So that's a good thing.
No, this is a bandwidth problem, right? So BitBundler will automatically load up a file that you call bitsbundler.js. Here's something about this. Internally, I call require, so this file can be JS, can be JSON, it can be a directory. That's when things get interesting. If you call it a BitBundler, you make it a directory. In it, you can have an index.js file, and that will automatically load up your bundler configuration. And in that directory, you can do all of your custom transforms if you really have to. That way, you don't have them all littered around your root directory. But for simplicity purposes, we'll just go here.
That's cool.
So what we're going to do is tell it what is the source. We're going to say, did I put it? Oh, I'm a criminal. And source, sure, and what's the other one? Hello. Thank you. Little slow learner here. So we're just going to put in here source. We're going to do this guy, and we're going to put it out into the destination folder. We'll call it bundle.js. This should do. So we're just run interesting, something that I like, and that means also that you should like. But one of the things that I like to do is avoid installing things globally. Don't install BitBundler globally. Install it as a dev dependency, and then export and create an actual script. So here we're going to call it build, and all that's going to do is call BitBundler. This does a couple of things. When you set it up as a dev dependency, you can manage the version of the actual package yourself for the particular project, and it doesn't pollute your global install, and everything that is in the script is actually going to access your local here, I'll show you. This stuff gets added to your path. So you can just call it like as if you're calling it from the console. And so what you do is that you just call run build. Build, it's actually a built-in script. So we'll just do that. Whoop. Okay.
The main folder.
What?
And then make it as a folder.
Why would it do that? No,
Does the SRC parameter have to be?
no, that's the problem. Is that the actual build is a built-in script, and I need to call the one that I specified. So you gotta call npm run build.
Oh,
Bit me right in.
Yarn when it does that.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised. Let's try it out. Yes.
There's another plus with Yarn, by the way, in case anyone doesn't know it. You can do like Yarn run BitBundler, and it'll call the .bin script for you. It's very handy. You sort of like that.
I did not know I was walking into like a yarn job over here. That's cool. That's cool. We'll continue with this. And anyway, so if we actually check this out, okay. So two things happened here. We have a bundle, source map, yay, but only has one of the modules. The way the BitBundler is built is agnostic of the ecosystem. You can build it to process CSS files if you wanted to, but for that you have to specify your plugins that basically define what assets to handle and how to handle them. So same thing as for JavaScript. I could have assumed that it was the default thing, but then it just gets a little hairier with actually managing order in which things should be executed. So, all right, enough talking. So I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to install bitloader.js. and this will give me access to automatically handling all the dependencies that modules have. It doesn't matter if they have import statements or require statements or AMD. It will just grab all the stuff out and package it for you. So with that, it goes BitLoader. Yes. Now, should I use yarn? Now, if we actually run this again, let's see our bundle. Yay! So now this thing has required for hello, and it actually has the other module that is the important thing. Now, I should be able to run this. Yay, it works. And this should work in the browser. But we'll get to the browser because I can't server right now. I don't have my server set up. Hello, Mom. All right, so if we're good citizens, I'm not a citizen yet. No, I'm kidding. We're going to add linting. So let's add that. So we're going to do npm install BitLoader ESLint. And we're going to add it right in here. And I'm going to talk a little bit, just for 1 second, why I did it this way. Why linting in the actual pipeline of building. So when the building is taking place, it knows your entire dependency structure. So if the second time around you modify a file in the middle of that structure, only that file gets processed, not the entire directory. Because normally when you have gulp or grunt or whatever, they will process the glob that you normally give ESLint, right? If you have enough files, that becomes a big, big bottleneck. So the purpose of doing it here is that internally Big Bundler is smart enough to know, hey, this file changed. I'm going to feed that file only through this pipeline for refiguring out the dependencies. Maybe you remove the dependencies, so it has to run through here. It also relints it to make sure that you didn't mess it up, which is common.
Does the order of these matter? So is it important that
let's find out. Some of them don't, some of them do. Oh man, I should have used that. And yarn, I'm gonna change. Some of them do, some of them don't. It depends. If so, what I was
saying.
saying.
That example with linting, if they're when you establish a dependency tree, does that happen with BitLoader.js because it's figuring out what type of module loading you're using in that? So
Yeah.
Would it matter? The order?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there is also something in there's an internal pipeline that is made of quite a few different things like name resolution, dependency, and transform, and post, and pre, and blah, blah, blah. So depends on what the modules are doing. Like BitLoader.js is really not transforming much. So the output of BitLoader.js is really not going to affect other processors in the pipeline. ESLint is not processing anything. It's processing the text you give it. It's not transforming it. Now, if you put Babel in the mix, that might affect what happens in the order because ESLint might be or might not be processing the transpile thing. I removed the guessing work and I made it as much as possible independent of the order, which is pipeline stuff that happens internally. ESLint handles things very, very, very late in the, actually no, really, really, really early. As soon as you load it from source, ESLint kicks off because I don't really need to transpile anything else. I don't need to process the transpilation. So it doesn't matter if there is 20 lines of 20 transpilers in the middle, ESLint is never going to see them. So I just organized it internally to be that way, but it's just something to be aware if you're authoring plugins. Anyways, so we'll run this again. I am a bad, bad boy. So let's fix that semi. Hey, told me where it was. Hello.
Under function.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
There. Yeah.
Alright, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna suppress the console and we're gonna configure our own .ESLint rc JSON. Yes, one of the formats. Sure, why not? Alright. We're going to establish a rule for that. Say console. We're going to say off. Again, both issues are gone. One of the things that happened here that I kind of waved my hands around it is that we specified an ESLinks file. We did not specify anything in the actual BitBundler configuration. One of the philosophies behind BitBundler is that I want you to use what's prescribed by the tools that you're using. If you're using ESLinks, I want you to use ESLinks RC files. If you're using Babel, I want you to use your Babel RC files. Why? Because if one day you decide the Babel is BitBundler is really crappy, you can abandon it and continue using your stuff. I don't want you to buy into my stuff. I want you to use my stuff as a helper, not as a owner of your ecosystem. So we'll see that with Babel in a second too. So create your ESLinks JSON, and that's it. So what we're going to do now is let's convert this stuff into import statements. Why not? Just because we can. So in this case, I am actually going to export. We'll do a lambda. Some people love doing this. I don't like it, so I'm not even going to do it. Export a function. Export a function.
Why don't you like it?
It's still a lambda.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. So I'm going to explain it. I'm just going in an infinite loop with you until you let me explain it. So the problem with lambdas, not the problem. The thing they're fixing is lexical scoping. So when you export a lambda, you're implying that you have in mind some sort of scoping. And that's probably perhaps something that we have already misconstrued at this point so late in the game, because people are thinking that functions are the same thing as lambdas. They're not. So when you export a lambda, you're telling me that you want me to pay attention to the actual code in it because it's caring about the lexical scope. Now, you're not beaten normally by it because people don't think about it that way, but if you're using things like Mocha and you pass in a lambda in test setups, you're not going to be able to use the internals of Mocha because they are expecting you to use functions that they set up a context into, right? Not the lexical scope. So if you're using lambdas, you gotta make sure you know why, not just because you can.
Couldn't that be a positive because you're saying, like, don't give me your scope, I don't want your state, get away from me?
So there are two problems. There are multiple ways to look at this problem, right? I mean, you can say that Mocha should not be setting up a context and assuming this to be the context. I hate that approach anyway, but using lambdas just adds so much more friction to the problem that it's just not even worth it. Just add it where you need it. In this case, technically, the actual product of it is exactly the same. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But the semantics of them are different.
Yeah, the scoping is different because we got up handed to the Java crowd. I'm up and up on that. It's still an unnamed function, right?
Sure. Well, let's animate.
Okay.
Make it
All right.
better. It don't matter. It's just more of a catch. It's something to pay attention to.
Let's go back to talking about Benzinga.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just do.
Does that come up so then with the bundler and I guess Webpack or any other bundlers? Is that like a problem that you have to protect against?
No, because I'm not doing much.
You don't care, yeah.
No, I don't care. I'm just processing your code. I'm not executing. So we'll do import this, import that. Alright, so for us to make this thing work in the browser and in Node, I'm using an old version of Node. I have to add Babel to transpile it from ES 2015 to 8.5. Yeah, that's what it does, I think. Can't remember if that's 8.3 or 8.5, but anyways. There is BitLoader Babel. I'm going to add that to the pipeline over here. BitLoader Babel. I'm gonna do two things. I'm gonna run it without it, and then I'm gonna run it with it, so we can see the output of it. So we'll again run build.
Does BitLoader.js use like a yes next AST or a parser, or does it just use like yes by like what kind of parser does BitLoader.js use to parse the required statements out?
That's a plugin, BitLoader.js. It's using Acorn.
Okay.
And it uses a late version enough that it supports import statements directly.
I was
Yeah.
just curious.
In the old days, when Acorn didn't support ES 2015, you had to transpile it from Babel first, so that I get the required statements, and then I would parse that out because they're just functions. It was just me tricking the system. Not really tricking, but playing with it. So here, what we have in the bundle is that we have import, hello, and such. That doesn't run. Let me see. Hope not. Otherwise, I have a newer version of Node. Yeah, so we have an actual error running it. So what we're going to do, is that we're going to transpile it and then run it again. Of course. That worked. Let's see what it looks like. Now we can see the Babel did its magic, converted stuff to require statements. And this is the important stuff that I was talking about, normalizing your module definition. Now it doesn't really matter what the browser runs. All of this stuff is defined. This require statement is actually defined internally somewhere here. It's a local function. It doesn't matter. The browser doesn't need to know what that is. Now there's this guy that gets exported out, and I can talk a little bit about that. So BitBundle allows you to create libraries and export things by name, so that if you load up that bundle, you can import by name things that you've actually you can actually export. You have exported in the other bundle. So if you have bundle React, for example, you can load that up in the browser as a script tag, and then later on you can say require React, and that's automatically going to get you the proper thing from the proper React thing.
If you have multiple bundles on one page, does it just overwrite the previous require with the next bundle?
Yeah, so there is a cascading effect. So what happens is that each bundle has their own set of things that are exported in a cache internally, like it's a map. So as the ones that are being loaded get loaded, you can import things that have already been loaded previously, and it's because the cache just gets built up internally. And internally, it basically says, okay, well, I'm in this current internal require statement. I don't have it locally. Let me just call the global one, and then the global one keeps on calling the parent. That's something more that BrowserPack does for me. I use other people's software. All right, so that's that. So, do we want to add React? Do we want to continue with this, or yeah? Let's add React. Now, adding React means that we're going to set up a server, so it's going to be a couple more minutes for that. Depends on how fast the bandwidth is, since I'm not using Yarn.
It's not too late.
No, it is actually late for that. But what do I do? All right, let's just install. Here's what I'm going to do. That's why I have all the tabs. Whoa, where's my browser? I am so confused right now.
Is it in a different work screen?
There. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So we're just gonna copy the thing straight out of Hampton. Here. This is the sample React. It so happens that it's also a Hello World. Yeah, exactly right. So we'll just remove all that. Just put this for now. Something about single quotes. I don't know. I'm the only guy.
You love typing?
If I love typing.
No div.js, that is important on.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you heard of Prettier?
Yeah.
It actually will reformat those single quotes right to the quotes by default.
Yeah, awesome. I am going to have to hook that up later. So we'll do this guy. Now, here's what's going to happen. I got to install React and React DOM, obviously. We'll save them as 50 dependencies. They're going to get bundled up, so. Oh man, running out of time. Alright, cool. So, let's just run this and see what happens. Oh, unexpected. So the reason this is happening is that I told Babel to process some garbage you can't process. So what I need to do is install a couple of Babel presets to be able to manhandle this thing. So we'll do Babel preset React, and we'll do Babel preset 2015. I'm not that cool. You see, it takes me so long to get up to speed with the cool stuff. I'm busy taking care of my children. That's not an excuse, anyways.
Real developers use stage 0.
That's what I use at home, not here. I don't want things to fail unpredictably. So here in this case, we're going to actually introduce a Babel RC. And we're just going to configure the presets here. And React. Hopefully that's all. I can't remember all the syntax, but okay, well, that's a hell of a lot better. Now it's a linting problem. Oh man, I didn't want to do this. I have to install an actual npm install, what is it?
Yes, Babel.
Plugin, React. There you go. So we'll just add that to the config. It's in one of my what?
Just plug in.
Yeah, it is
And you
plugins,
get
but
RC.
I actually have to extend the plugins, and I can't remember. We'll just shoot from the hip. Let's do that. We'll do plugins. That's what we're saying.
All right.
Oh, it is. We'll do React, and it will extend the feature. What was this? Plugin React. You know what? I'm just gonna cheat. I'm too tired for this. I'm too old for this too. Oh, there it is. Man, oh, that's hard to get. And one line for sure. Why not? Alright, so let's do that again. Yay! Almost there, pal. So let's see what the bundle looks like. Hopefully don't need that anymore. Wow, it's a lot of garbage in here. And this, my friend, is where we love bundle splitting. Because I'll talk a little bit about that. We probably won't have time to set it up. I will if you really want me to, but bundle splitting, if you split up all of your vendors, they don't change very frequently. So if you allow the browser to load that does not change frequently, you will allow the browser to cache it for you. And you maximize your uptime now, your load time, because the browser is so good at caching that even when you don't want it to cache, it actually caches. It's a sad truth, but it's fun to laugh at it.
If you have time, I kind of wanted to hear from the bundling side about like how HTTP2 influences the future.
That's part of next, yeah. That's part of the next, the part of where we're going.
It seems like we're kind of going full circle. Because like many years ago, I remember it was like, oh man, you want all the files, and then CDNs, and browsers cache it, and everything's good.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, bundle everything. And it seems like where we're going.
So that's, I can skip all this junk and get to it. I mean, the fundamental problem that we're solving is behind maximizing loading of files. And the problem that we are solving with bundling, I think, in the future is going to be around module resolution. There is no NMR, node module resolution in the browser. So when you say request path, what does that mean? You're not requesting a local file. You're requesting path. So you either have to pre-bundle path or serve it up already pre-bundled, pre-shimped, so that it translates what it means for a node versus what it means in the browser, or you just don't basically make it known that it's not going to work. I mean, you can't have both. You can't have native run code node code run in the browser simply because of the module loading system. There are things that are system dependent. So what I'm trying to say is that things that are third party, that are coming from NPM, that are node modules, they're definitely going to get bundled up. And they're going to still be your vendor stuff. And within your code, when you do import React, for example, or import path, that's going to do similar to what I was talking about earlier, that you can have your bundle loaded in the browser, and then you can import things by name, which is not something that is commonly done because all that stuff gets automatically handled for you by the bundler. So here, I'll show you what the import statements look like in here. So React is exported out as number 2. React DOM is exported out as number 3 if I were to export them. So you basically have to say require 2 or require 3, and that's used for maximizing or minimizing the size of the bundle. That's why that's done as a map of numbers. But what you really want to do for this to work is that this have got to be matching. You have to have React down, so you can then say from another place, import React down. And that's another mode that I have in big bundlers, because I'm predicting at some point that, since nobody's going to use it anyways, is that when you can create a bundle with big bundler, you can still import things dynamically from a bundle. Does that make sense? Did that kind of answer the part? So what I predict happening is that things that are relative path or absolute pathing, they're going to go through the process in the browser of figuring out what the actual URL is for that item, makes a request over HTTP2, and then the server can figure out, all right, well, you want these other files, push them back automatically to maximize the multiplexing of HTTP2. But for things that can be figured out on the client side directly or the server side, that has to be bundled.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So let's do this. Npm install, say div cpx. It's going to give me my asset management. I'm actually going to install div. You know what? I'm just going to cheat on that one because of just in the interest of time. I'm going to bring the actual import required dependencies from another setup that I struggled through already. I'm going to copy all this stuff. Just in the interest of time. So, not because I can't type. We'll copy these two. Yeah, so.
copy that into the source. Just making sure.
You got me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Let's see. Alright, still there. Good. So I have it installed. I'm just gonna run this. Let it figure itself out. Whoa.
Can you copy the dependencies over? You just copy the script.
Damn it. I'm tired. That's not an excuse, I'm kidding, I'm just sloppy. I'll just copy this gentleman.
Running from that folder.
I could do that, and that would be the smart thing to do. I've never claimed that was smart. So we'll do that. If it was yarn,
Yeah, we'd be done by now.
the demo would be over.
Maybe we should use yarn and vim. There's probably a vim command that.
No, dude, npm 5 they fixed all the problems, so it has a lock file now, so it's okay to use.
You know, anytime vim gets used in a presentation, it turns into like audience vim call. Basically.
So here's one thing that I like about the PM2. I'm gonna run start, and this actually launched. PM2 is a process manager, and what I told it to do is start up a particular script, and I'll show you what the script looks like, give you a little better context. Did I copy it in the right place? So this devconfig.js, it's something that PM2, that MP2 will use, and it will start up this different apps. That's what they call it. And it's basically I'm calling npm scripts. I'm calling npm script run assets, and I'm asking it to watch. I'm actually starting the live server, and I'm asking it to ignore the node modules. This part is this ignore watch is actually for MP2, and what it does is that, or PM2, and what it does is I'm asking it to monitor live server. So anytime I change this, it will then respond the actual process. This is really useful when you're actually configuring, like, for example, Big Bundler. You know how I was adding and removing the different dependencies or configurations in the actual Big Bundler thing? Every time I change it, it automatically restarts the build, just the build process. Since I've started different processes, what happens is that this system becomes more resilient, because if my build fails and it crashes and it burns, I can restart it without having to restart the other stuff. Right? With Gold, you're shit out of luck. Pardon my French, I'm sorry, I just like enhance the move of that. But yeah, with this you can actually do things like reload. You made a change and you want to do something, you can reload the server, and that will automatically, it will restart the process, and it will basically give me the page that I needed to see, which is not working because of figure it out. And here's another script that I added in there. It's whoa. npm run on it. So there is something in PM2 that allows you to monitor the processes that are started. It tells you how much memory is being used, the things that are the information about the process, and then it gives you a live feed of the logs that are being generated by the processes. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's see here. Let's just change something. Live reload is already working, so I'm just gonna change something now. Did it work? What didn't I do? So let's see. Run, build. Yeah, that worked. Alright.
Oh, cool, there it was.
What was it? Oh, you saw it?
Yeah, it was there.
Alright, you know. Yeah, no, it's these logs are persistent. So you know what? I'm just gonna run into the other setup I have. It's just we need to have the other talk. So with that.
Turn off the PM2 stuff once it's started.
Yeah. So. Thank you. So just run it here. Start from services. I get my hello world. And
The Reaper is knocking on the talk. Never mind.
the Reaper.
The talk Reaper.
So I'm not getting luck for this one. I have no idea why. Where's the Reaper?
Maybe if you run it with yarn, it'll show the logs.
You're gonna kill me with this.
I think you're gonna kill me after this.
So anyways, so the bottom line of the setup is essentially that I have Bitbundler, the static asset management, so that things get automatically copied. Sorry, I had to completely break this and skip a bunch of stuff. But yeah, so what's happening next is essentially bundling of third-party stuff only. We're gonna have the JavaScript module loader coming up pretty soon. Some people have it already implemented behind dev flags. Service workers for caching modules, things that hopefully will be leveraged, and HTTP2 for eagerly loading modules. What that means is it's actually not even correct. If I request X and X has all of these dependencies in it, the server can parse that out and then send those modules back to me also. That's basically what that is. And here's how I think that thing will work really well. The service worker itself can be your proxy to getting stuff in and out of the HTTP2 server, and the actual loading system can interact with your service worker, so that the requests that are being made are either already cached or they are going to be cached. So the service worker knows that, hey, the server is in the process of sending me these things. I'm not going to make another request. And eventually get served up from the service worker itself. That's how I think that's going to work. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
So the service worker is going to be your proxy to make requests if they're not pending from push from the server.
Cool.
But yeah, this is stuff that I just think is going to happen. It's happening. Anything else that you guys think that, or ladies, think that I should add in here? Questions? Not about yarn?
Thank you. Yeah, great. So the Hangout that will be sooner.
Okay.
If you can join that, then you can present your screen. You don't have to.
I will.
It's easier. I'll answer your question while he's setting up. There's a lot of when they announced the Angular 4 or whatever, there was a talk. I was sending the guys around the office that they somebody asked the question, what do you guys use to? I forgot the guy's name. What's the guy's name that does Angular? It starts with an M. Mishko.
Yeah, no, you're talking about.
You know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, Mishko, I think his name is. But anyway, they asked him like, what do you guys use to bundle this? Because they basically said like Webpack is not working well for us, and he said like. Oh, well, at Google we have we have our own very advanced bundlers that we use. And they're like, wait, but you're using it for Angular, but can we use it? And he's like, no.
So some of the things are actually in code splitting as Webpack implements is based on a document that Google came up with. I don't know if you're familiar with GWT.